Today we're going to review accessibility statements. Are they actually needed when you are building your website? Is it important for you to include an accessibility statement, just like you might include a privacy policy or a terms of use with your website? So why should you have an accessibility statement? Accessibility statements show that you care about accessibility, that you care about people with disabilities and how they might interact with your website. It provides information about your current content's accessibility. It demonstrates your commitment to accessibility as well as your commitment to social responsibility. And for some organizations, there are legal requirements to provide an accessibility statement. Some examples of this would be Section 508 compliance, so government agencies, for example, in the United States, and also compliance with certain EU or European Union standards. What is actually required in an accessibility statement? You need to put a commitment to accessibility in your statement. It is also important to include what standard that you are applying to your website. For example, are you trying to conform to WCAG 2.1? And you may also want to include that you are following the level AA standard, or are you sticking with WCAG 2.0, for example? And the third item that's critically important is that you provide contact information for whenever a user encounters a problem with accessibility on your website. They need to be able to contact you, to provide feedback, to request help, and to get an idea if you're aware of the problem they're encountering and what you're going to do to fix that problem. So what are some countries that actually have requirements about providing an accessibility statement? And this is up to date as of April 2024. The European Union has implemented the Web Accessibility Directive in certain countries of the EU. So it is not the entirety of the EU, but specific countries. And this is something you would have to look up. If you are someone who does business with Europe, you need to check whether the countries that you're doing business in are following the Web Accessibility Directive. It mandates that you should share an accessibility statement on public sector websites, mobile applications, and some private sector services. And when you're trying to follow the guidelines of the WAD, it is something that you may want to include is to consider adding appendices for each of the EU countries that you are trying to comply with their laws, and to write that statement in the language of that country, and you should document compliance efforts. Since Brexit, the United Kingdom has implemented web accessibility regulations that require public websites and applications to meet the WCAG 2.1 level A standards, including publishing a detailed accessibility statement. You need to identify and explain non-accessible content. You need to provide alternative content formats to those that request it. And there should be links for feedback and a protocol to address any unresolved issues. You should include results of the latest accessibility testing and commitments to future audits. Canada's standard on web accessibility does not specifically mandate an accessibility statement. However, certain provinces have local laws like Ontario, Manitoba, and Nova Scotia that encourage providing web accessibility information in the form of reports under best practices legislations, which are basically similar to accessibility statements. You should highlight specifically what accessibility supporting technologies that you're using on your websites, for example, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You need to provide detailed issue resolution plans, note external accessibility audits, and demonstrate a commitment to accessibility. Israeli standard IS 55688 requires public and private sector websites to publish clear accessibility statements prominently on their website. The statement must list the site's accessibility features, contact information, and how users can provide feedback and get help. The United States Americans with Disabilities Act does not explicitly demand the use of an accessibility statement. However, it is considered a best practice for compliance. If you can provide an accessibility statement, it's probably the best thing to do, although it's not mandated. In the latest litigation session that I had attended, one of the lawyers did speak that they do look for accessibility statements on your website. So if a website does not have an accessibility statement, it's a red flag for certain legal groups that do check websites for compliance and then may send demand letters out or start a litigation about ADA noncompliance. So this is something they're looking for, whether you actually commit to accessibility, whether you have a statement. Not having a statement doesn't mean you're automatically going to be sued, but it's probably better at this point because of the state of litigation in the United States that you try to include an accessibility statement when you can. And then Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act actually requires the presence of an accessibility statement for federal agencies and those entities receiving federal funding. So if you have to comply to Section 508, then you need to have an accessibility statement. You need to provide users with information on features, limitations, and contact information for support. What should you include in your accessibility statement? Any known limitations to avoid user frustration, the measures taken by your organization to ensure accessibility, technical prerequisites, for example, supported web browsers, what environments where content has been tested to work, and references to national or local laws and policies that are applicable to your content. For example, if you are someone who has to comply to 508 or you do business in Europe, you may need to mention those laws and policies in your statement that you are striving to comply with them. Again, let's go back just to be clear. This is the minimum of what you need to place in your accessibility statement. Your commitment, your standard that you're striving to follow, and contact information. And depending on where you are, you may need to include certain things because of the country or laws that you're trying to follow. And then these are things that you should include. They're not necessarily as required as the first three items, but they should be included if you can include them. So, for example, if there's an issue on your website that's going to cause user frustration, that for whatever reason, maybe an interactive that is not accessible, talk about it in your statement, make them aware that this is a known issue, and also talk about what you're doing to fix that problem. Is there an alternative way to provide the information in the interactive that you can provide to the people so that people who cannot interact with it can still get the content that's provided in that interactive? To write an accessibility statement. So the statements are actually primarily for your users. So if they're using your site and then they encounter a problem, they may go to your statement to find out, for example, is this a known issue that you are aware of, so that they know whether it's something that they should provide feedback to you, or even if it is a known issue, they may still want to provide you feedback. So you don't want to use overly technical language or use legal jargon that can confuse people and increase frustration. You should write in plain language and not use language that's common amongst developers when they speak to one another or lawyers. Use common terms that everybody would understand. So an example would be, you would state that your videos do not have captions. And this is in contrast to saying, we don't meet WCAG success criterion 1.22, because the average user is not going to know the specific success criteria that you're trying to strive for compliance. The average user is just going to realize, hey, your videos don't have captions, and because of that, because I have a hearing issue, I have no idea what's going on in your video. Use plain language when writing your statements. Where should you put your statement? It needs to be somewhere that's easy to find on your website. You should link to it from multiple places on your website, so wherever the user is, they can get to it if they need to. So an example of a common place where you may want to put your accessibility statement is in your footer, your help menu, your site map, an about page. These are common places that people put their statements to make them easy to find. And if you're someone who runs related websites, multiple websites, website and a mobile application, or other web content, then make sure you're using a consistent link name for your statements so that it's recognizable no matter which website they're on or which mobile application they're using. They know, if I click the help menu, I can get to the accessibility statement, so that they know where to go. And what are some examples of accessibility statements so that you have an idea of what do you need to really put in one? So the W3AC Web Accessibility Initiative has actually put example statements on their website, and we can take a look at them now. Here is a minimal accessibility statement. They have used this example, which is City Lights Web Store. So here they're putting their commitment to ensuring digital accessibility for people with disabilities. They're talking about their continual improvement methods that they want to be. It's an ongoing experience. It's not one and done, and they're looking at it on an ongoing basis. They put the standard that they're trying to follow, the conformance status. So they are seeking to follow the WCAG, and here they state City Lights Web Store is partially conformant with the WCAG 2.1 level AA. Partially conformant means that some parts of the content do not fully conform. We're striving for WCAG 2.1 level AA, but we don't fully meet it, so there are some known issues. Because this is a minimal statement, they don't actually go into that. So they're sticking with the absolute requirements, and then they have contact information. So if you want to provide feedback to the City Lights Web Store, this is our phone number, this is our email, this is our postal address. And they state, we will try to respond within 5 business days. So they give it kind of a timeline so the person is not going to get frustrated waiting for your response when you usually don't respond for 5 days. So you should state how long it typically takes you to respond to a feedback. And it tells them when it was created and how it was created. So it also tells them we've used a generator tool to help come up with this statement. So this is a minimal accessibility statement, has the 3 things we talked about: the commitment, the standard, and the contact information. A more comprehensive, complete accessibility statement will have more information. Again, we're still working with the City Lights Web Store. We have our commitment statement and what are the measures that they're taking to support accessibility. So they've included accessibility as part of their mission statement. They're trying to integrate accessibility in their procurement practices. They've appointed a specific accessibility or ombudsperson to handle issues with accessibility. They provide continual training for staff, and they include people with disabilities as their design personas. They consider people with disabilities during their design process. When you're being proactive rather than reactive, you're more likely to find success. During the process of developing things, they are considering accessibility. Conformance status, again, this is the same from the previous one where they say that they're partially conformant with the WCAG 2.1 level AA. And they make a note of, although this is their goal, they have also tried to include some level AAA success criteria. And this means that they explain this specifically. They say images of text are only used for decorative purposes. And then reauthentication after a session expires does not cause loss of data. And some videos that have included sign language interpretation. So for certain items on their website, they've actually gone a step ahead and tried to meet level AAA success criteria. There is a feedback section, so you know how to contact. And they also talk about they've done some compatibility testing, and they know that their website is compatible with a particular browser using a particular assistive technology using this particular operating system. It is not compatible with browsers older than 3 major versions or mobile operating systems older than 5 years. So basically, if you're trying to use their website on an old browser, you may encounter problems. So they're specifically saying use modern browsers to use our website. Technical specifications. So what are the technologies that they've combined to work with accessibility? And they've used HTML, CSS, JavaScript, as well as WAI ARIA. Limitations and alternatives. So despite best efforts, there may be some limitations. So these are some known issues. Comments from users. So if a user is uploading an image into their comments, the user may not have added text alternatives because the business itself cannot control what the user is doing in their comments. But they do mention that even though the users may not put text alternatives in their contributions, they monitor those comments and they try to repair them within 10 business days. So if you note a problem, alert them, use the report issue, and they'll try to get to that within 10 business days. And then archive materials may not work because they've used outdated technologies that don't support accessibility. So they will convert those documents to new formats upon request. Within 3 business days, they have a specific email to contact support in order to do that. And the way they assess their website is to use an external evaluation, so someone outside their company to do an assessment. And that report can be found here. And then if you want to look at their evaluation statement, you can again go to this statement. And this statement was approved by the director of communication at their company. So formal complaints, they aim to respond within 5 business days and propose solutions within 10 business days. And you are entitled to escalate a complaint to national authority if you are dissatisfied with our response. And then again, they put the date the statement was created and how it was created. And then this is the actual statement for the WA Web Accessibility Initiative website. So in summary, they include their website posted since May 2018 meets 2.1 at level AA, but older content would meet earlier versions and some content meets level AAA. So again, they include their measures to support, they use their conformance status, and they state they fully conform to the WCAG 2.1 level AA with partial conformance to AAA. They welcome feedback. Here's the email. Physical addresses and location phone numbers are included here. They respond within 3 to 5 business days, but sometimes it can take up to 3 weeks. But if you don't receive a reply, they provide someone that you need to text. They are designed to be compatible with assistive technologies for the last 2 versions of major browsers. Older browsers, Internet Explorer, will probably have problems, and it's not designed for Internet Explorer 9 and earlier versions. And then in addition to HTML, CSS, WAI, ARIA, JavaScript, they also have SVG. Limitations and alternatives. So some of their videos use YouTube, and videos can be also found on their server. And then they link to GitHub for providing input on resources and documents. WAI assess the accessibility of their website by self-evaluation. And then this statement is they actually name who is responsible, their outreach coordinator. So this is an example of the statement for this website, and it's more of a complete as opposed to a very minimal statement. So this is an example of what you might want to do when developing your accessibility statements for your website. And then to make things easier, we now have accessibility statement generators. So they actually also provide us a generator tool. There's also digital A11Y, and then there's the accessible web and userway level access. So this is not comprehensive. Doing a quick search, you will be able to find these generators, and there are many more. So it makes it a lot easier now to do this. You don't have to start from a blank page. You can basically go to these generators, and they're going to ask you information. So your name of your organization, what is your URL, name of a mobile application, what is the standard you're seeking to comply to, are you partially, fully, non-conformant, not assessed, none, and then if you have any additional notes about that, you put that here. And then how do you receive feedback, when was this published, and then what are the efforts you're using, so you can check these, but if there's something else, then you can put that here. You can put technical information, limitations, so if a known issue, you can give a title and then describe that issue, say why it occurs, what you're doing about it, and what to do in the meantime. And then here's some compatibilities with environments. So it works in this with this assistive technology on this operating system. This is something where it doesn't work very well. What are the technologies that you've used? You can add other technologies. What are the types of assessments? And then what are the evaluations that you've done? And then you can preview the statement. And then once you've created a statement, you can basically download it as HTML and or copy it out. This is the digital A11Wise generator, so it asks similar questions as the other. It has drop-down menus for you to select things. This is more where you would enter information yourself, and then there's some checkboxes. What browsers have you tested on? Assistive technologies. And then you can either download as a Word document or HTML. And then there's a video so you can watch how it's generated. And then they provide a video transcript. So they have alternative methods of getting information. And then Accessible Web has a statement generator. So similar, name, URL, website, conformance status. Is there a specific accessibility advocate at the organization? Who is that person? What is their contact information? And then this is where you can select particular technologies, browsers, WCAG assessment, and then UserWay, which is part of level access, will have a generator as well. But they actually require you to put your email in because this is more of a lead magnet, so they're going to try to, in order to get your policy, you need to put your email, so they'll email the statement to you, but then they may also kind of mark it to you. So that's the difference with some of the other generators, is that you can't preview the statement right away. You're going to have to wait for them to email it to you, and you may be subjected to marketing. So that's all we have for accessibility statements. I think at this point, even though it's not explicitly mandated in the United States by the ADA, if you have the ability to use one of these generators to help you or choose to write it yourself, it is considered a best practice for compliance in the United States. If you can add an accessibility statement to your website, it's better than not having one. And like I said, it is something that companies that are looking to find businesses that are non-compliant, to potentially send out demand letters or potentially start litigation, it is something that they look for. Are you someone who has thought about accessibility, or are you totally unaware of accessibility? So it will help if you have an accessibility statement on your website to show that you're someone that's aware of the issues you're trying, and that will help you forestall issues. It is important, though, that your statement be something that's truthful. Don't make promises in your website's accessibility statement that you're not actually seeking to meet. There are certain countries that if you put something in your accessibility statement that can be proven to be untrue, or you've been saying that you're going to address something and it's been 10 years have passed and you've done nothing, you can actually be subject to litigation from that in certain countries, where if you've made a false statement in your accessibility statement. So if you're going to put an accessibility statement on your website, make sure it's a truthful statement. It's something that you've spent time looking at to provide the right information to your users.